Hey, everybody. How are you today? Welcome to the Back on Track podcast brought to you by I Am Somebody. I am your host, Jennifer Bulbrook, and I am here offering you a unique experience through inspiration by showing you that you are somebody. In this space, I share personal experiences, we discuss serious issues such as all things mental health, and we work through the process of having our thoughts serve us by incorporating new techniques into our daily lives. At I Am Somebody, we own who we are because we are somebody. And you do not want to go anywhere this week because we have another celebrity in the house. We have John from Love After Lockup. And for those who don't know, Love After Lockup is a reality show about people who meet while one is in prison, the other one is out. Usually that's how they meet. And we kind of follow their journey throughout and after. And you can listen to some of my other previous episodes because I've talked about that. So I just want to really dig right in with John and his experience. So first, welcome, John. I am so happy that you agreed to come on and chat with me today. So welcome and thank you.
Absolutely. Glad to be around.
So for I guess I just kind of want to jump in and let's talk about like your journey first and let people know kind of like your journey on the show and I guess how I would have known who you are.
Well, my journey was very long as far as getting on the show. Because I started out actually in prison back in 1996 and I did 12 years.
Mm.
Um, and got out and, just started attempting to live my life again. Um, Love life wasn't going that great. I'd been in a few relationships, but none of them lasted. So one day I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna get back to my roots, and I'm gonna uh, maybe I'll try someone that's incarcerated because we have a lot in common. I know what they're going through. They know what I've been through. It should work. So I got on this website called Paper Dolls and found Christiana, and we started talking and hit it off really well. And one night we're talking on the phone, and I'm actually watching Love After Lockup at that time, and I'm like, hey, this show's pretty cool. I'm gonna send him an email as a joke. Um, which is much my style. Well, it didn't turn into being a joke because they called me the next morning
Oh
and
wow.
wanted to do a Zoom interview, which I did. And I'd say probably within a week or so, they were already sending us contracts and they're like, we want you on the show. She was close to getting out. And we kind of did that. And I did not know how popular we would become. We
Mm.
figured we'd do one season and be done, but it didn't turn out that way. They renewed our contract pretty quick. We did Life After Lockup for 2 seasons, got renewed for a third season of Life After Lockup. And at that time, I had asked Christiana to call it quits, that we could no longer be together. And we didn't end up doing the fourth season. So they left our third season at kind of a weird place. And fans are still trying to figure out exactly what happened.
Mm.
And there was a lot.
Yeah. Are you able to tell us what happened?
Yes, I can. I'm not under contract at this time, and I probably won't be under contract again. During the time that we were together, Christiana did have a significant amount of mental health issues, depression, and some other things, which really wore on the family. She self-medicated a lot, contrary to what the show portrayed. She did continue to use substances throughout the filming and airing of the show. She ran off to Dubuque a lot, usually while I was at work. She cheated on me once shortly after we started our journey, and I knew about it because I caught her leaving on camera at the house. Um, and they did air that on the show, the camera footage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I had known about it for a year. And then one night I was at work. She got home at like 4 o'clock in the morning after a bender. And, I finally, she admitted that she had cheated on me. I told her I already knew, and the next day I told her, that we were pretty much done, that I couldn't do that to the kids, and it just wasn't working. DHS was called twice on us because she would come home while I was at work, on a, completely high, and just it wasn't working. And she was under the impression that she was much more famous than she was, which was the reason that she couldn't get a job, because all she wanted to talk about was the show, and employers did not, want to, want to go down that rabbit hole with her. So
Mm-hmm.
she was turned down for a lot of jobs that were good paying jobs. Um, and it just, with everything going on with her and the drug use and all of that, it just it wasn't working for the lifestyle that I lived.
Right. It must be hard because you yourself at one time struggled with addiction. And so
Um,
or did you not? Am I wrong?
Not with substances.
Okay.
I went to prison for bad checks,
Mm-hmm.
which became an addiction after a while, where I wasn't even buying anything significant. I was just doing it to do it. Um, and it became unmanageable, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone's seen the movie Catch Me If You Can, that's kind of what my life had turned into.
Mm-hmm.
I was printing my own checks. I was changing routing numbers. I was changing account numbers just by one or two digits, so it looked like a mistake. I would print my identification number on the check so they wouldn't look closely enough at my ID because it was already on there. But I would change one or two numbers so it wouldn't get flagged in the system. And I mean, it became bad, where I
Mm-hmm.
ended up, out in California and Mexico, and I was, writing bad checks out there and running from the law. And I was on run for over a year without getting caught, which was, pretty huge because I didn't have a dollar to my name. So yeah, it became really bad for a long time. And I was with my first wife for 20 years, and she turned me in a lot. So, you know,
Yeah.
uh, finally I dissolved that marriage in 2013 when I got full custody of my kids. So because she ended up turning to drugs as well, and going to prison, and then it was a big mess with her. So I wasn't about all that either.
Right. So how did, if you don't mind talking about it, how did
Yep.
the check writing and the fraud and that, how did that all begin?
Um it began very innocently. Like, I was with a buddy of mine. I'm like, hey, I want to go get pizza, but I don't have any money. I wonder if they'll take a check. And when it was so easy to do, it just became, hey, I can pretty much get whatever I want, and I
Mm.
don't have to have any money on me. And then it just became bigger and bigger. And I think the biggest check I ever wrote was for like $32,000.
Oh, wow.
Uh, and that's the one that ultimately got me caught. um, and yeah, they came after me about 2 days after I wrote that one, and they're like, no, enough is enough. And I had this one detective, and he was the one primarily on my tail all the time. And I called him up one day, just kind of like they did in that movie, and I'm like, hey, uh, just leave me alone. I'll stop, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, I'm not going to retire till you do. And then, you know, one day I'm like, I'm done. And, I turned myself in, and I did all of those things and decided I was going to retire. He retired 2 days later. So he was true to his word. He retired after I did. The first plea bargain I got was like 360 some years or something like that. And I got it down to 10, and I did 12 out of that 10.
You did 12 years out of the 10 years?
Yep. Evidently, I didn't know how to behave myself while I was locked up. So,
Mm.
yeah.
What made you decide to retire?
I was tired of looking over my shoulder.
Mm.
I mean, it seemed like every time I went out, I'd get pulled over and end up going to jail and have to find someone to bond me out, which nobody wanted to bond me out. I'd already burnt most of my bridges. Um, the relationship with my folks was strained. I didn't get to see my kids that often because I was always in and out of jail. I mean, it wasn't working for me anymore. So I decided I was just, done with that whole situation. And there's still times when I'm struggling for cash now that I think this would be so easy to do because I already know the system.
Mm-hmm.
But I just have to tell myself that's probably not the way I want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of the check systems that they have in the stores here in Iowa anyway are because of what I did then. Um, I've done a couple of talks and whatnot to some different groups at different retail stores, and yeah, because of my spending spree back in the 90s, they had to implement all of these different systems to try and prevent uh, things like that from happening in the future. Because I probably took Walmart for a good, $75,000.
It became an addiction, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I couldn't stop. It was too easy. The thrill was there. Every time I saw one of them checks go through the machine and it said approved, I was like, cha-ching, sweet. And I never kept anything. I never made any money. I wasn't out selling the stuff that I bought. It was just, it was just
Mm-hmm.
crazy.
A lot of people, when they hear addiction, they think, drugs and alcohol and, sometimes even gambling and shopping. But they don't really think of this. And so what would you tell people out there that like this is an addiction? Like how did it affect your life?
Oh, it made my life absolutely, terrible. I was scared to go home. I was scared to stay at hotels. It I was scared to drive around, uh, because you're always looking over your shoulder. Because I mean, if once you get into that, people know what you're doing. Uh, because you've been turned in. You may not know it, but somebody knows what you've been up to. And they are looking for you because people don't like it when you take their stuff. Um, you know, and I justified it by saying, oh, these are big retail stores, they're not going to care. Well, they do, and they don't like it. So they will turn you in. Um, I finally got caught for a bad check that I had in Wyoming when I lived in South Dakota. Someone turned me in and said I was in South Dakota. Well, Wyoming won't extradite unless it's a surrounding state, and so I went to jail. Talked to my attorney, who I swear to God looked like he was 12. Um, and I said, I'll take 3 to 5 right now. Let's sign this. He goes, that's not how Wyoming works. And I'm like, okay, how does Wyoming work? They're like, well, we're such a small state that it takes a year to two just to get into court. And they're going to want at least 5 to 7 out of you. And I'm like, so I got to stay in jail for a year or two before I even go to court and then get 5 to 7? I don't like that. They ended up calling me that night, offering me a plea deal for unsupervised probation, dropping everything down to misdemeanors, and they were going to let me out the next morning, which worked for me. And the reason they did that, and I was so lucky, I was so lucky. They had to find someone from 10 years ago that worked at one of the stores that wasn't even around anymore that could identify me for a period of 2 minutes and say definitely that that was the guy that did it. And they couldn't do that, so they kind of cut me a sweet deal.
Mm, lucky.
I was very lucky.
Wow. How did that experience in prison change you?
Prison was the absolute worst. Because I didn't know anything about prison, so here I am. I mean, that was back in the 90s, so I was definitely much younger than I am now. And, I was walking in there and I was in there with people that were in for rape and murder and this, that, and the other. Here I am, this little check writer. And, I got into debt right away, which was bad, which caused me issues throughout the first couple of years
Mm.
because I kept running into these different people I was in debt to. But then finally I got hooked up with the Native American group at one of the prisons I was at because I am Native. Um, so I got hooked up with them, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna take care of all of your debts. We're gonna settle everything. We're gonna start fresh. But if you get into any more shit, we're gonna take care of you." So things were fairly decent at that time, and I was able to make it through the rest of the time, and I learned how to do time. I didn't accept visits. I didn't make any phone calls because it was much easier to be an inmate or a convict at that time, without stressing over, oh, is this person going to come visit, is this person going to do this. But it did make it a very lonely experience you know for that time because it was basically just me. I didn't have any money coming in, and with the child support and stuff I had to pay at the time, I would make on average with my state job about $6 a month, and would have to live off of that for a month, which is impossible inside a prison setting
Mm.
because prison is not free.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard. So you said it was like, it was a lonely experience for you, and you obviously didn't have any family, friends in there and that. How did that alone affect your mental health?
Oh God. You know, you kind of have to check as much of your mental health at the door as you can, because you don't really have time to think. You don't have time to get inside your head, and when you do, that's when people kind of unalive themselves,
Mhm.
and which I've seen on multiple occasions while I was locked up. But I think the worst thing about I think the worst thing that affects mental health in the prison system is solitary confinement, which I actually did 2 years of that. Um, and you have absolutely zero human interaction in solitary, um, which that's when you start talking to the walls and plunging out your toilet and using it as a telephone to talk
Mhm.
to someone in the next room. Um, so yeah, it becomes, you have a whole different view of the world, um, once you've been locked up and once you've done solitary and all of that. You don't trust people. You don't. I mean, getting your life back after doing that is very hard because you don't trust anyone. You don't want to be around anyone. You don't want to. Relationships are hard because you automatically think, all right, this person's out for something, and they're lying and they're cheating and they're doing whatever. And that's just the way you live your life, and
Mhm.
that's the way you think.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna ask you because you had said that like when you got out, you were, were tempting to live life again. And so I wanted to ask you, like, what is the transition between prison back to like not the real world, but the outside world? What's that like?
Oh my God, it is terrifying because no one wants to give you a shot. I mean, I got 40 felonies on my record. So my rap sheet's like 12 pages long.
Hmm.
And people see that and they're like, uh, no, because Iowa marks them all down as theft. And you don't want to have a guy working for you that has 40 thefts on their record. uh, that doesn't look good.
Hmm.
So getting a job was hard. So I worked some factory stuff, and I drove a taxi cab for a couple of years, which I enjoyed. And then I decided this isn't really where I want to be. So I decided to start looking into some different trainings and stuff like that. I went back to college. I did about a year and a half and decided that, I mean, I was doing good. I was on the national honor roll. I was in the national honors fraternity. I went to the University of Northern Iowa, which is an excellent school here in Iowa. Um, and their colors are purple, so that was a plus. Um, so I decided not to do that, and I went and I sought out some other trainings, and then ended up getting a job working with adults with disabilities. And I'm like, I like this, it's rewarding, but I really want to work with troubled kids, primarily teenagers, because I wanted to see if I could help some of them, um, not do what I did.
Mhm.
So I ended up getting a job at a place in Minnesota, um, at a juvenile facility working with kids, and got a bunch of trainings there. Stayed there for about a year until I realized some of their practices bordered on illegal and abusive. So I left and I went to work for a crisis center.
Mm.
And I worked at the crisis center for about a year. And they switched management, and the manager that I liked went to work for a assisted living outfit. And I decided that, she called me up and said she wanted her old team back because she trusted us, and asked if I'd come work for her, which I did. And again, the corporate structure was terrible. So I was searching for another job, and I found one at another youth facility. And when I went into interview, I took in all my certifications that I had gotten over the years. And the guy that was interviewing me looked right at me and said, "You're more qualified to work here than I am."
Mhm.
Um, so they went and they got the big boss, and they said, "We need this guy." They hired me on the spot. I just got done with my training the other day. Um, so I'm back working in the juvenile mental health field as a youth counselor. And
That's
this is
amazing.
with it's with 40 felonies on my record.
Yeah.
And I'm still out here doing it. So you can recover from incarceration, but you have to want it,
Mhm.
and you have to want it bad. I've got 3 vehicles. I've got full custody of I only have one child left at home, and she's autistic, so that becomes challenging at time when it's just me and her,
Mhm.
um, because it's only me and her, and I have to work and all of that, so I have to check up on her frequently. But we have a house. I mean, we have all the things that normal people are starting to get in their 20s, but I didn't get till I was almost 50.
Mhm.
Um, so it takes time, and it takes a lot of work. It takes more work for us than it does for someone that's never been in our situation.
Yeah, yeah. And but the amount of accomplishments in that you have done since, the struggles you were dealing with is remarkable, and it's inspiring, and you just should be so absolutely fucking proud of yourself. Like it's
I
just
try.
yeah, right? Like listening to it, it's like it shows that there is hope, and it shows that like there is possibilities for everybody out there.
I mean, I'm a licensed med manager for the state, so I can like pass medications. I'm certified in several different suicide preventions. I'm also a certified recovery coach. I'm certified in celebrating families, which is an evidence based program that does like parenting and anger management and substance abuse and all that. Certified in crisis intervention for adults and juveniles. I'm a mandatory reporter for the state of Iowa, and I mean there's a lot of certifications I've been able to get, and a lot of the trainings you can get for free, or you can get a job that will just put you through a massive amount of trainings, and then if you want to move on from there, you've already got the trainings. Um, I it's just it's a lot of work though. It's a
Mhm.
lot of time, it's a lot of money, because some of the certifications I had to pay for out of pocket. Some of them I had to travel for, like to Minneapolis and Colorado and some other places. But I mean, it can be done.
Mhm.
You can definitely recover from alternative lifestyles, if you will. But you got to want it more than you have to find something to replace the addiction. You have to find
Mhm.
something healthy to replace the addiction, and something that makes you feel better than the addiction made you feel.
Yeah. Yeah. You need to find your big why. and that
Yes.
big why will help you down the road. But it, like you said, it takes, you have to want it and you have to do the work, and you clearly done both. And so, like I said, like, it's something to be so proud of, and it shows people out there that there's, don't stop, just keep going, keep trying, and it will happen. Because
Oh
there's
yeah.
no, like, you're, no offense, but you're no special unicorn. Like, everybody, nothing makes you special except for you did the work and you believed. And so anybody can do it as long as they believe and put the work in.
Right. And the work's the hardest part because you
Mm-hmm.
want to give up. And I mean, the easy money, of course, is always you know, the thing that people look to go back to,
Yeah.
because I mean, I don't make a whole lot of money. I work in social services,
Mm-hmm.
and we do not work in this field for a paycheck. I will tell
No.
you that.
No,
uh
absolutely.
you know, you have to want it more than anything, and you'll get it. I mean, you may have 100 no's before you get that one person that'll give you a chance.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm starting to realize is that a lot of these places that deal with juvenile mental health and some of the other mental health places want people that have the experiences like I've had, because you can't sit across from someone and tell them how to get off drugs or how to curb addiction if you've never done anything.
Yeah.
I know I've had counselors before that are like, "Oh, I know what you're going." No, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
You have no idea
Yeah.
what I'm going through, so don't even try.
Yeah.
And I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Yeah, yeah. You want somebody there that has had the life experiences and that have had the struggles and the obstacles that you have been facing, and it may not be the exact same, but it's relatively, like, similar to where you can actually relate to the person.
Right, exactly. And when I was going through my last marriage with Christiana, and uh the one thing she would always say is, well, I don't want to be taking all these meds. I don't want to be, that I feel fine, things are going good, blah blah blah. And I'm like, that's because you're taking them.
Hmm.
um and then when she would stop taking them, you would definitely see a shift in personality and mannerisms and all of that. And she had some breakdowns and stuff like that that we had to work through. And it's not easy living with mental health issues in yourself or your significant other. uh and people need to realize that it's nothing against them if you're married to someone with mental health. Because it's not being directed to you, it's
Hmm.
something within them. And as much as you don't want that to be a part of your life, or you don't want to be belittled or whatever they happen to be doing at the time, that it's just as real as cancer or any other disease.
Hmm.
Mental health and addiction are both diseases that you just live with. They can be managed, but I mean, they're a part of that person's life, and you're either going to be there and help them get through it, or you're not.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I was going to ask you, because you had said your first wife had struggled with, like, drugs, and we know Christiana had struggled with some depression and drugs. And you said was even self-medicating, like, throughout filming and that. And so I guess what I wanted to ask was, like, I've been where I've been the addict and I've been the loved one of an addict. And so it's kind of two different but similar positions. How
For
would
sure.
you maybe, describe your experience and the difference between the two?
Oh, it's definitely difficult being the loved one of an addict and someone that suffers with mental health. Is definitely one of the hardest things you'll do, because it's very unpredictable. One day it could be all rainbows and puppies, and the next day she's screaming at you at the top of her lungs, about who knows what.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you won't even be able to tell what it is or what even triggered the event. um so it makes you second guess things a lot. Like, do I really want to be here? Do I deserve this? Blah blah blah. And my first wife suffered, or still does, I guess, from borderline personality disorder,
Mhm.
which is one of the hardest things to live with, because in that case, you don't believe that there's anything going on and nobody does anything, or you never do anything wrong. It's always somebody else, um, which makes life very interesting.
Mhm.
Um, and ultimately, it became too much. And when the children started getting sexually abused, um, by one of their siblings, it became too much. I immediately filed for divorce. I immediately filed for custody, and she still doesn't, even though she knew it was happening, she still does not think that anything that happened back then, had anything to do with her, or was in any way her fault. And we haven't talked in years and years and years. We don't communicate. She doesn't have any contact with the child that's left here in the house. A couple of the other children have sought her out and realized what a bad situation it is, so they don't have any contact with her either. But I mean, both sides of the fence have their major downfalls, and if you're not strong enough with yourself, you definitely won't be strong enough, in my opinion, to handle those situations.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree 100%. And that's, and it doesn't matter if like you're struggling with one addiction and your loved one's struggling with another addiction, it could still feed one addiction can still feed another addiction.
Oh, for sure, 100%. There's no doubt about that.
Do you
Addictions are very unpredictable and very difficult to live with.
mhm. What were some of the like did you ever find that any of your wives' addictions or mental health were a struggle when it came to your addictions or your struggles?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. Because I mean, Christiana would go through, and not that I find anything wrong with marijuana at all. She did have a medical card, um, but she was using the medical card as a reason to be able to smoke as much as she wanted wherever she wanted, which in Iowa, since it's not legal and we only have the medical cannabis, you were only allowed to have it in your home and you could only have so much and blah blah blah. Well, she was going out and getting it through alternative sources and getting types of marijuana that were not approved in the state of Iowa, and she was, going through like $400 a week, which was a good a good portion of money that we had.
Mhm.
um so when we got paid from the show, I mean, that was gone after we paid bills and all that. I mean, the rest of it was, she'd spend $700 at Walmart at a time. um and then, the money on her marijuana and stuff like that. So yeah, there was times I thought, I'm gonna have to come up with some more money to pay bills. I'm gonna have to do this, and one addiction can definitely trigger someone else to go right back into their old lifestyle. If you're not careful, you
Mhm.
have to be careful. And eventually, no matter how much you love a person, there comes a point in time where you might have to say goodbye, for your own safety and mental health and the safety of the children and this, that, and the other. And people can't think of it as weak or giving up. It becomes a safety issue at that point. What's safer for you? What's safer for the kids? And you sometimes you just have to make that hard decision to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd so agree with you on that. And it's definitely not an easy decision. And some people might think, well, why is it not easy? Like they're screwing up and they're doing this. And usually with addiction comes like, stealing and lying and all that other things. And so people think it should be an easy decision for that loved one just to like say, you know what, get out or whatever, especially when it's like a partner type
Right.
relationship. And so a lot of people don't understand. And so you have had relationships with people that are struggling and that and have affected and have kind of um put your own struggles and demons and that kind of, not where they're like you're doing them or that, but they're kind of affected and kind of maybe make you think, oh, maybe I want to do this. What stopped you from going back to your old ways?
My children primarily, because I already knew what Christiana was doing, so I knew she wasn't going to be around for long. She was going to end up back in jail, which she ultimately did, and she
Mhm.
is. Um, because if I go away, my daughter has nobody. There's nobody I can call right now and say, "Hey, can you take my child? I have to go and do jail time for, you know, whatever reason." That's just not an option. I get in arguments with the school all the time because I work like, 40 minutes away. And if my daughter has a meltdown at school and they get a hold of me and they need me to come get her, I can't just drop everything working in the field I do and run back to town and grab my child from school.
Right.
So we had to work out additional safety plans and all of that kind of stuff. Where the school now has permission to, if she does have a meltdown at school, has permission to take her home and drop her off because I have no concerns with her being home by herself, even if she's in a mood. Um, and with autism, if people have dealt with that, it can be dicey at times,
Mhm.
because certain things can set her off, and you just don't know what those things are going to be. um, like right now they're letting schools out early, so she's a little concerned about that, because I have to go to work, and we just got announced that we're under a blizzard warning until 5 something. um, So I'm hoping that it doesn't get too bad where I can sneak out of work a little early and get home. And tomorrow's the worst of the blizzard, so I have tomorrow off anyway. Um, but as you know, in the mental health field, you just can't find people to work.
Mhm.
And I think the pandemic did contribute to that a lot, because people were making more money off unemployment than they were going to work.
Yeah.
And so just a lot of people are still not going back to work.
Yeah, it's
So
unfortunate.
it is, it is, because if one of us that does go to work every day needs to not go in for weather or something like that, sometimes it's just not an option.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't like before the like before COVID hit, like, we were talking kind of briefly earlier about, burnout in that in the field, like it's so high as is. And
yeah,
because the pay isn't good, like let's face it, the pay sucks,
it
especially
does.
for what you do. It's, there's not a lot of people that are going for that field, especially now if COVID has hit. So it's just
Right.
gotten a lot worse. And so, like, for anybody, for you and anyone who is still in that field, like, I know, and for me, like, I have my clients who struggle, and now they're struggling even more because of COVID had hit, and they're dealing, like, their mental health went up to the, highest height through this kind of stuff. And so now's the time for people to really like be aware of other people and how they may be struggling and not judge them for any other reasons for anything, right? Because so many people are
Oh
just
yeah.
judging people. And so
Oh
that's
yeah.
one thing that, I just wanted to put out there, like people never know what other people are going through. And so,
Exactly.
yeah, right. And
COVID
so,
was a whole mental health crisis in itself.
yeah.
um, because people were stuck at home. They
Hmm.
were they were forced to deal with the things that they would normally get a break from,
Yeah.
by going to work. And
Hmm.
now you're in the house for, you know, 24/7 with all of these things, and you're trying to figure out how to pay bills, and you're trying to figure out how to do this and how to do that. And it's it was and I don't think it got any attention at all. COVID was more of a mental health crisis than a public safety crisis.
Yeah. I agree. I so agree. And even when it's done, like now you expect them to everybody to just leave their houses and a lot of people developed like some kind of social anxiety in that where now they don't
Yes.
even feel comfortable leaving their homes and they don't
Oh,
feel
absolutely.
comfortable being around other people. But nobody really talks about that.
No, no. I think it's definitely under discussed.
Yeah.
Um, my most recent ex uh, definitely had some social anxiety. COVID pretty much made her into a I never want to leave my house type of thing, and ultimately, that relationship ended. Um, but it people don't talk about it. They talk about the medical part of it, but they don't want to talk about the lifelong lasting mental health effects of what this pandemic has done. And I talk to fans all over the world, and we talk about the effects of COVID in different countries and this, that, and the other, and it's pretty much the same everywhere. And then you've got all these people where, oh, with all the conspiracies about the vaccine and this, that, and the other. And the one thing that people don't realize is COVID was here once before, back in I can't remember if it was the 1800s or when it was, but it was a big thing. It wasn't called COVID then. I can't remember exactly what it was called, but they had already done all of the research and developed what they needed to develop, and then it just kind of went away. So
Mhm.
they had all of the research already, so it was fairly easy for them to go back to that research and pick up where those people left off to develop a vaccine rather quickly. So it wasn't just a bunch of people in a room that said, hey, we're starting from scratch.
Mhm.
They already had all the groundwork. So
Mm.
it was nothing new. It was just finishing up the development from what the original people had already done.
Oh, I didn't know that. Huh.
Oh,
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that.
It was the SARS virus.
Okay,
Um,
yeah. Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know they were
So
connected.
yep, the SARS virus basically is COVID. And
Oh.
it had gone away, but they had already done research on a vaccine back when SARS was killing
Mhm.
all the people back in the day.
Yeah.
So they, in my opinion, I believe that they just went back to that original research, which caused them to be able to come up with the vaccine fairly quickly. And because the common cold is also a member of the SARS and Corona family, you know,
Mhm.
they were able to adapt from that. And now if they could just get rid of the cold, I'd be happy. But
Right? Yeah, I hear you
you know
on that.
I don't see that as a thing.
No. No. I don't think so. I think if it was gonna happen, it would have happened by now for sure.
You would think so. You
Yeah.
would think so.
Yeah. But it also makes me wonder, like, you were so quick to be able to, like, maybe not quick, but you were able to get like some kind of help for like COVID and that in a pretty decent time, even if it
Yes.
was from SARS. So like what's going on with this cold thing, and the flu.
Right. Exactly. um I think that I mean, they're not life threatening, so I
Right.
I really don't think that there's,
Mm-hmm.
a hurry to find a cure for any
Yeah.
of that. Of course we have the cold and flu tablets and all of the other things that, help with
Mhm.
the symptoms. And I think that's what it is with COVID. I think eventually we'll have a I mean, we do have some pills out for COVID now, that
Mhm.
will alleviate the symptoms within like a day.
Yeah.
But you have to be, I think, over 50, I think, to get them,
Oh wow.
when you go to the hospital. Because they talked about it. I had to take my daughter to the hospital by ambulance, about a month and a half, 2 months ago, or something like that, because she had got COVID on top of a UTI. So they had to take her to the hospital, and they talked about giving her the pills, uh, but they decided against it because it's been found to be more effective for the older generation of
Mm.
folks.
Hmm.
So, and I never got tested at that time. I just assumed that I probably had it because I mean, I was down for the count for almost as long as she was.
Mm.
And we just kept in separate bedrooms, and I'd go and make her food and put it outside her bedroom door, and she'd eat it and put the plate back out there. And we just had
Yeah.
a system
Right.
for those several days.
How is she doing now?
Oh, she's good.
Great.
Well, she's good from COVID.
Mm-hmm.
We had another event that happened about 2 weeks ago, which I won't put out here yet because of the legal things going on. But her mental health right now, because of a recent event, is very fragile.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to make it through that between the two of us. And I don't know if it's harder on me or her. But
Yeah.
it's something for sure.
Mm-hmm. And it's so hard to watch, your loved one, especially your child, to like struggle.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Because I've been the only constant in her life since 2013. So she depends on me for everything because she knows I'm always going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and like I said earlier, she gets out of school early today, and they already canceled school for tomorrow, so she won't
Mm-hmm.
go back until after Christmas vacation now, which she's bouncing off the walls for Christmas as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but
Yeah.
that's just the child.
Yeah. You had I won't keep you much longer, but you had
Yep.
mentioned, you had a most recent ex after Christiana.
Yes.
And I saw online in that I believe her name was Crystal, or maybe you had one after that.
Yes.
I'm not sure.
Yes.
So where are you now with, like, I know like you have a good job now and you are really moved on with your life and a lot of parts of it. And so where are you now with like the dating scene?
I'm single.
Okay.
Um, I'm definitely not opposed to getting in another relationship at this point. If someone comes along, I'm open to that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but right now I'm not doing. I mean, I'm not currently in a relationship. Um, which is fine in itself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like I said, I'm not opposed to it. Um, I'm just waiting, I guess, until the right person comes along. Christiana did reach out to me not too long ago and talked about the possibility of us getting back together, and I told her, I'm not sure. I mean, after everything you did, I mean, I don't trust you. So, and then ultimately she was like, well, you're right. We probably shouldn't get back together because you'll never trust me. And I'm like, I don't know if I'll never trust you, but I don't trust you now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I think getting back together with her is something that I'm not going to entertain anyway. Um, it was just it was too much, and she's not ready to make the big changes that
Mm-hmm.
she would need to make to be successful.
Right.
Um, you know,
Yeah. Maybe if she's made those changes and was able to be like, hey, like, look at me now, like you, right? Showed and had the evidence to back it up that, she's making the steps to, change her life.
yeah, I mean, I'd be happy for her if she did. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I could ever get back into a situation with her though, just because. uh, I don't know, her fam with her family dynamics and all of that. I just think it would be more toxic than anything else to get back into that situation. So I've chosen to just stay away from that and see if Mrs. Right falls into my lap at some point, and we'll just kind of see where that goes.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Are you opposed to women in prison, or where are you with that?
I'm not necessarily opposed to that.
Okay.
But I mean, it would have to be a pretty amazing situation for me to go back down that hole again. Um,
Right.
there would have to be a lot of things in place for that to happen. Um, so right now, I'm just kind of you know hanging out, and we'll see where things go.
All
But I'm
right.
I'm open to all kinds of different different scenarios, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Awesome. And so what's next for you? Anything where we may see you on TV wise or anything? Or are you just gonna just live your life, do your, amazing job where you're helping these amazing youth and we may see you, we may not.
I mean, if they decided to do a reunion show, which I've talked to several of my other people that have been on the show that would be open to that. I don't know if you've ever seen 90 Day Fiance. I'm sure you have.
Yep.
But if Sharp Entertainment and WeTV were to do something like that, I mean, the possibilities would be endless. Like the Single Life and the Pillow Talks and the
Yeah.
tell-alls and all of that. There's a lot of us that would be interested in doing something like that. I've also discussed the possibility of doing maybe 60 days in. I
Mm,
would be interested in something like that. Um,
that's a great show.
there's also been some talk between me and a couple other people about maybe doing our own reality show, um, kind of like The Bachelor, except the prison edition.
Mhm.
Um,
I like.
so we've thought about possibly doing something like that, and one of the producers that I worked with on the show, who's a freelancer, has agreed that if I decided to do something like that, that he would be willing to come up and film it. So we've thought about that, but for now I'm just kind of living my life. Of course, I'm still in the spotlight, especially when I go to like bigger cities,
Mm-hmm.
Chicago and Atlanta and places like that, which I go to frequently for different conventions I go to. I'm recognized a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I get a lot of messages from fans asking when I'm going to come back on the show because it's just not the same after some of us older, you know, OG couples from the show have left. It's not the same. They're not
Mm-hmm.
liking a lot of the new couples. They just can't get invested in some of these newer couples that are
Mm-hmm.
on there. They want us older guys to come back
Yeah.
and you know give them some truth,
Mm-hmm.
because I think a lot of people are now uh, kind of thinking that most of the stuff on there is made up,
Mm.
uh, just for TV, and I get
Right.
that a lot. How much is real, how much is
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
and I can only speak for my season, but everything that happened on my season, except for the stuff with her sister, that was kind of it was more like perception is reality. People
Right.
perceived that me and her sister had a thing, but that's not really the way that it was going.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but most of the stuff was accurate. Some of it we had to redo because the film crew wasn't there when it happened, so we
Mm-hmm.
had to do some reenactments. But I mean,
Yeah.
it was some true stuff, and it doesn't take them very long to film a season. Maybe a week and a half to film a whole season.
Yeah.
It's fairly quick because we had 12 to 15 hour filming days,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
for
It's
about.
actually remarkable how quickly and how like efficient they do the filming and they put these shows together.
Oh yes, oh yes. And then sometimes they'll film a show 8 or 9 months before it airs, so you're not allowed to do anything during that time. You
Yeah.
can't be seen together, you can't do this, you can't do that, because it ruins the storyline, which is probably one of the hardest things to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do
um,
you handle that? Like that must take a toll like on your mental health and like your
oh my god, yes.
relationships.
Oh yes, oh yes. Because they'll have you getting into fights about stuff that you didn't even know happened, stuff that might not have happened. They're just like, hey, this would be cool, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just the way it went. And Christiana was so fragile that even when the show told them, hey, we're just reenacting this, she would still think it was 100% accurate, and she would be really mad. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, you got to have fun with it. I mean, you got to have fun with the show. Let's just do the thing and get on with the day. And but yeah, it definitely put a toll on a lot of things, and I think that's why some of the couples don't make it, and a lot of the people on the show don't work.
Mhm.
They think they can just live off the show forever, and that's not how it works. I mean,
Yeah.
I worked the entire time we were filming, and I would just take off, the filming days from work, and then, you know,
Mhm.
continue on with my life after that.
Right.
Uh, but it was definitely an interesting experience for 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely
especially
looked like one.
especially during the pandemic,
Yeah.
because the first season we filmed Love After Lockup, that was pre-pandemic, so it was fairly easy. And
Mhm.
then once we started the Life After Lockup, it was during the pandemic, so we had to get multiple COVID tests. We had to get like two negative test results before they even would come out. We had to do it like right before they got there, so it was recent. uh while they were in the house, we of course had to wear masks and all of that, and then
Mhm.
we'd take them off for the actual filming part. And it was just, it was a lot during the pandemic.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. But you did it, right? And it was an
We did it.
experience to be had that many people cannot say they did.
Oh yes,
You're right.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't want to take up any more of your time. We have chatted and I've loved it, and I could really honestly I could chat with you for hours. So like thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me, and sharing your story and talking about your struggles and stuff with like all the viewers. Before I let you go, is there anything you may want to say to the viewers who are out there who are struggling with maybe an addiction of their own or some mental health?
um Yeah, I mean, the main thing to remember is you're definitely not alone in your struggle. It may feel like that a lot, but you're not alone, and there's no shame to admit that there's something going on that you can't handle, and to find help for that. I mean, even at my job, they offer us like, 6 free mental health sessions per incident that happens at work or in your personal life, because they realize how important it is for people to get help for their mental health things. So, there's definitely no shame in asking for help. And it's the hardest thing you'll do, but once you ask for it the first time, you know, you're in there, and you can go at your own pace. You can, you know, talk or not talk. I mean, those the professionals are out there to listen and to help guide you in your recovery. And if it's too unmanageable, there's nothing wrong with the treatment facility either. If it's that unmanageable that you need to go that route, do it. There's a lot of good ones out there. People are there to help, and there's no shame in saying, "Hey, I got to do this for me." And at that time, don't worry about what anyone else says. Don't worry about, well, you're not going to be home if you do this, and that's going to put a hardship on me. No, well, it's not about them. It's about you. So do what's best for you. The rest will come. Just, handle what you got to handle for you, and then worry about the rest of your life.
Yes, absolutely. Beautifully said. Absolutely. I love that. Thank you again so much, John. I really appreciate you coming on. And thank you, all of you lovely viewers out there. I know there are thousands and thousands of podcasts, and you all chosen to listen to us. We absolutely love and appreciate every single fucking one of yous. So don't forget to subscribe to my podcast, share it with your family, share it with your friends, and remember, say it with me, say it loudly, say it with confidence. I am somebody. Love you all.